Good evening, everybody, and welcome to tonight's meeting of the Planning Committee. My name's Councillor Stuart Keithley, and I'm chairing the committee tonight. And before we start, just a couple of items to cover. The first thing is if we need to get out because there's a fire, there's no fire test. We just go back out the way you came in, past reception through that door, and we meet at the windmill in the car park. Okay? In terms of the meeting, this is a meeting held in public. It's not a public meeting. What that means is that only those people that are registered to speak can do so, and I've got a list of the speakers here. When you are speaking, if you're a public speaker or a member, please make sure that we can hear you through the microphones. Keep the microphones close to you. Okay, so that's, I think, the meeting. It is live streamed and recorded as well. So I'll introduce the top table tonight. So on my far right is Olivia Quinn with Democratic Services. Sue Mullins is our legal advisor to make sure that we follow due process. On my left, Richard Gardner is our planning manager. And I can't quite see Paul Thompson, but he's the case officer presenting. Hello, Paul, presenting tonight. Richard, you've got a statement to read about your role.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, everyone. That's just to clarify that my role here tonight is to provide impartial advice and to assist members in their decision taking. Thank you. Thanks
very much, Richard. And members, I just draw your attention to the update sheet and the speakers list I think you should have. Okay. So we can start the meeting now. Agenda item 1, apologies for absence. Please, Olivia.
Chair, we have apologies from Councillor Harvey.
Thank you very much. So, item 2, disclosures of interest. Any members have a disclosure of interest they'd like to notify me of? I have one myself, Olivia, to note, and that is that I did take a trip out to look at Glendale, which is 2520, stayed on the public highway. I just needed to get the context of it. So thank you for that. Item 3, minutes of the meeting held on the 25th of February 2026, the last meeting, I think. No, probably wasn't the last meeting. The minutes of the 25th of February 2026. All had a chance to look at those? Happy for me to accept them? All agreed? Thanks very much. Okay, so we're on to the meat of the agenda. The first item is application 2500787 FUL. That's land at Ladbroke Road, Bishop Sitchington, for 6 detached dwelling houses. Item 4 on the agenda, and Paul's going to present on this for us. So, Paul, when you're ready, if you'd like to take us through this application, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. Good evening, councillors and members in the gallery. Proceed through here. So this is the northeastern corner of Bishop Sitchington. This is the application site with the public footpath in green running along the western boundary. Red building over here is listed, but the application site is not within its setting. And there is the River Itchen down in the valley in blue, just there. This is a site that is just within the built-up area boundary, which is indicated on this plan by the purple dashed line, roughly where my mouse pointer is. It was originally, and by originally I mean some 13, 14 years ago, earmarked for a new GP surgery for the village. However, funding was diverted to Harbury, I believe, to increase provision there. And so the site, after a 5-year cooling off period, became available for other forms of development. And this is the form of development we see before us. 6 detached dwellings of a similar sort of scale and massing to the Bishopsgate development over here to the west, across the footpath. There'll be a new pedestrian crossing, which you can see just this little protuberance across Ladbroke Road here, and a new vehicular access further along opposite number 36 Ladbroke Road. This is, I've compiled the principal elevations of all 6 plots. I've included 2 for plots 3 and 6 because they both have a bit of adornment on the side elevations, which reflects the guidance in our SPD. In the centre are the carports, which originally occasioned an objection from county highways, but have now been amended to meet the standards. An illustrative street scene. You can see that from Ladbroke Road, these houses will follow the slope downhill. The highest point of the highest house will be broadly level with the apex of number 29 Bishopsgate. And again, you see that's similar on looking at it from the east. It would be at the top. This is just an overview of the viewpoints for the photos I'm about to show. You can also see the Bishop's Hill Nature Reserve in the top left-hand corner there, a popular site, and one with a lot of wildlife. Again, county ecology has been consulted and looked through the proposals and pronounced them acceptable. So this is from viewpoint 1, looking towards the site, looking towards the footpath, which is just left of centre and around the corner to the east. Viewpoint 2, the site is directly before us in the centre of frame. As you can see the topography going down towards the river. Viewpoint 3, as Ladbroke Road wends its way north again, this is looking back up the hill towards the site. You can just see Bishopsgate, the roofs of Bishopsgate, just about there. And finally, from further along Ladbroke Road, getting close to the bridge over the river, this is viewpoint 4, again looking up towards the site. There's a couple of the houses on Ladbroke Road just visible there, and the site will be pretty much centre of frame. That, Chair, is my presentation. My recommendation is to grant permission on the grounds that the development is acceptable in principle and that any harms that I have identified can either be mitigated or are outweighed by our lack of a 5-year housing land supply. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much, Paul. Okay, we have a couple of speakers on this item. First of all, we have a planning agent for the applicant, John Baggott. Is that right? Good evening, John. If you'd like to come forward, yes, that's fine. Thank you. So if you just press the right hand of those 2 silver buttons, you should get a red light. Have you got any photographs or anything like that you submitted? No? Okay. So you have 3 minutes for your presentation. Let's take us through it for us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairman, committee members. I'm here this evening on behalf of the applicant, Gravane Properties Limited. Gravane is a privately owned development company established in 1972 and based here in Stratford-on-Avon. They specialise in smaller scale and bespoke designed housing developments that are sensitive to the surrounding area and are environmentally sustainable. They have a proven track record of delivering quality homes within Stratford District and wider Warwickshire. Members will be all too aware that the Council's housing policies have been found to be out of date and that the requisite 5-year housing land supply cannot currently be demonstrated. National planning policy advises that such a shortfall is a material planning consideration and carries significant weight in the planning balance, with a presumption in favour of sustainable development. The application before you this evening is for 6 detached family homes with the dwellings and their respective curtilages located within the built-up area boundary of Bishop's Hitchington. The balance of the site is principally given over to landscaping and BNG mitigation and also accommodates the sustainable drainage swale, which will all help enhance the setting of the development. To be clear, the private driveway would not be offered up for adoption by the Highway Authority. As your officer report confirms, the layout and design of the dwellings stand up to scrutiny, being attractive, distinctive and appropriate in this location. Separation distances and other matters of amenity are on all fours with the council standards. The L-shaped layout ensures that the development addresses Ladbroke Road with a resulting positive street scene, whilst also facilitating fully enclosed private rear gardens for all properties and also enabling natural surveillance across the development. Plot by plot, off-street car parking is in accordance with your council standards. Each dwelling will be equipped with water butts to allow for rainwater capture, electric vehicle charging facilities, air source heat pumps, and provision is also made for the installation of solar PV panels, with a layout such that plots 1, 2, 3 and 6 would accommodate solar panels on the south-facing roof plane, with plots 4 and 5 utilising the west-facing plane. This is a well-thought-out, planning policy compliant, sustainable form of development, which will provide an albeit modest boost to the council's housing supply, and it is respectfully requested that the committee support your officer recommendation. Thank you.
Thanks very much indeed, John. Members, do you have any questions, please, for the applicant's agent? Okay, well, hang on, there's one there. Councillor Harding.
Not sure this is entirely pertinent, but are you expecting the County Council to adopt this as public highway?
Councillor, no. The private access would be retained and managed by the applicants.
Okay, thank you. I think that was a point you made actually in your presentation, John. I do have a question for you. You say that the road would be managed by the applicants. What's the long-term proposal for the management of the road and the new trees and the suds and the swale? Because there will be potentially some costs involved in that. Can you explain to the members exactly what your proposal is in the long term?
Well, long term, this is all going to be part of the Section 106 obligations. So that would include the mandatory BNG mitigation and the 30-year management, the management and maintenance of the highway, and also the sustainable urban drainage system.
Yeah, I think the point I was getting at, John, is it the intention that the applicant will continue to manage that for those periods of time and charge the homeowners with a service charge for this? That's just what I wanted to clarify.
Sorry, Chairman, misunderstood.
That's okay,
yeah,
fine.
that's exactly that, yeah, absolutely. It would be a management company, but as part of the purchase of the property, then there's an annual charge.
Okay, thanks very much. Thanks for that. Any further questions? No, thank you very much indeed for your presentation. And the second speaker on this item is Councillor Gist. Good evening, Councillor Gist, welcome. Okay, I think you know the form. You've been here a few times already. So you've got 5 minutes. Will you need all of that? Do you need a reminder when we get near the end?
I wouldn't have thought so, but if you want to put the timer on, that's fine.
Okay, thanks very much. Over to you when you're ready.
Right, Councillor Rock originally objected to this application, so I don't propose to repeat the detail of his objection here, but I wanted to touch upon some of the points raised in the Planning Officer's report. In his report, Mr Thompson states that his recommendation to grant this application is chiefly its contribution to housing supply, and I'm well aware of the position that Stratford-on-Avon District Council finds itself with regard to the 5-year housing land supply. But on this occasion, I'm of the view that there are other considerations which outweigh this. Part of the site is outside the built-up area boundary. While this is largely the public open space part of the application, I would draw members' attention to the Landscape Officer's comments, and in particular that the mitigation elements have not been considered to offset the harm caused by the proposals, and the proposals are harmful to the village's setting and its approach to its rural setting. The public open space and the management of it is a concern generally to this administration, and members will be aware of SDC's policy in this respect. I note in the applicant's public open space statement, they state as follows: Section L3 cross-references core strategy policy CS25 and reaffirms that on-site public open space and or contributions will be required for all major housing developments, i.e. 10 numbers or more dwellings. As the proposed development amounts to just 6 number dwellings, this requirement is not engaged on this occasion and no on-site provision or off-site contributions are necessary. This is of considerable concern. Whilst green spaces are to be encouraged, I would be concerned regarding the ongoing management of the public open space, and in particular that the cost of doing so does not fall to the residents in the form of a management company. Parking has said to be inadequate, and from what residents have said, will result in more parking on the road. There is no affordable housing element to the application, which Bishop Sitchington Parish Council have pointed out in their objection, and no identified need of housing in the village addressed by this application. I appreciate that a payment for affordable housing will be made, but affordable housing is needed within Bishop Sitchington. Residents have listed many concerns in their objections, all from their lived experience in the village, which I urge the committee to consider. These include flooding and already inadequate infrastructure with burst water pipes, loss of habitat, and crucially, no direct benefit to their community. There is already pressure on primary school places and healthcare provision in the village, and whilst I note that there is a SIL contribution, this application does not address them directly in for the village.
Thank you very much, Councillor Gist. Do we have any questions, members, for Councillor Gist? A couple of hands gone up. I'll take Councillor Parry first.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, everybody. Good evening, Councillor Gist. Could you just very succinctly just outline the material planning reasons for objecting to this application?
Well, I think part of the site does fall out of the built-up area boundary. I know it's public open space, but the application covers an area that comes out of the built-up area boundary. I think the public open space element, I'd be interested in the committee's, there's a conflict there, isn't there, between we as an administration don't like public open space going to management companies, and that seems an inevitable consequence of this application. I'm looking at the affordable housing. I'm not sure that's a planning policy, but my concern as a ward member is that this application is almost the worst of both worlds, because it's not big enough for anything to acquire for the village, and yet the village has the burden of the development.
Okay. Do you have a follow-up?
You mentioned obviously that you weren't, you were concerned about the appointment of a management company handling the open space and the other areas. What would your recommendation be as to managing that whole area?
Well, I think my particular concern with the management company is, as I understand it, and perhaps Mr. Gardner and Mr. Thompson will be able to help here, is that because development isn't large enough, that there isn't going to be a financial contribution, and therefore that's going to be unattractive to, say, the parish council for them to manage it going forwards, and therefore it's likely that it will go to a management company and residents will be burdened with that cost.
Okay, can I
That's
just
my
say
understanding,
that,
but I don't know if Mr.
thank
Gardner.
you for that. I'll just ask you to wait to ask the questions to the case officers in respect of public open space, if there is going to be in fact any on this site, or whether or not it's private space and only available to the residents of that development. Councillor Ballinger, please.
Good evening. Can you discuss, let me know, I'm quite passionate about schools, as I always bring this at majority of the meetings. Primary school, is it oversubscribed, undersubscribed?
I believe that there are 2 spaces in the entire school. If you allow me to turn around, one of the parish councillors here, and he'll tell me. Is that right? I believe that there's 2.
Okay. GP surgeries?
There is a GP surgery, but as I understand it, the development at Lighthorn Heath has put additional pressure on the GP surgery, because there's obviously a lot of people moving in there, and therefore people tend to either go to Bishop Sitchington or Fenny Compton.
Can I have one more, Chair?
Yes, of course.
Yeah. And I know around the Ladbroke Road area, is that quite a high footfall with cars just generally, is it? In terms of like parking and
I think so. I mean, parking in Bishop Sitchington is a particular problem anyway, but yeah, Councillor Dugmore's nodding at me about the cars. He lives there. So.
Okay, satisfied with those answers? Okay. Councillor Hench-Seraphin, please.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening. Has the parish council done a housing survey needs at all?
Yes, they do have a housing needs survey, and I think it's in their objection that it doesn't really address, I think.
Okay, further questions? Councillor Gist, thanks very much indeed for coming along to make your representations. So we have no further speakers on this, so here's an opportunity now to ask the case officers points of clarification on some of these issues that have been raised in respect of the built-up area boundary, potentially the setting and the public open space and such like affordable housing. Councillor Ballinger?
That's one of them I was going to ask, Chair. Can you just clarify, is part of the site outside the built-up open boundary? Thank you.
It is. Councillor Gist is quite correct in her description of it. Again, refer you to the site plan. You see the purple, probably difficult to make out, but the purple dashed line running along the right-hand side of the private drive is the extent of the built-up area boundary. So what lies outside it is the private open space, if you will, the biodiversity area, wildflower meadow, the attenuation basin. The only built development outside that is all at ground level, so it's a small portion of the hammerhead at the end of the cul-de-sac and the 2 visitor car parking spaces, which are going to be screened from wider view by the new planting, by the tree belt, particularly as that gets more established. So in terms of the actual meat of the development, if you will, or the bricks and mortar of the development, we're not building houses out of meat. That's all within the BUAB, and anything that's outside it is ground level or green. Okay, Councillor Ballinger. I know it's quite difficult to see that line on that plan. Are you clear on where it is, Councillor Ballinger? Okay, so I've got Councillor Padgham next.
Thank you, Chair. Just to clarify, so the part of the development, or actually the green open space in the development, will only be for use by those residents, is that correct?
Correct, yes, although it's up to residents if they want to share it amongst themselves. That would be outside the scope of the determination, but it's not designated public open space now.
Further questions? Well, I'll take you, Councillor Fleming, first, and then I'll come across to you.
Yeah, just talking again about this public open space. We've already had a notice on motion in full council about these, and I know it's not technically public open space, but it is open space, and we're discouraging, we're hoping to discourage private management companies because of the escalating costs of these things after the first year or second year. So it's the only thing that I have at the moment that would make me think this isn't the right solution, but I just wonder what basis the officers made to make the decision that they would recommend grant with a private management company on the plot.
To some extent, Councillor, it sort of falls outside, a little bit outside the remit of the application. There's no requirement for publicly managed open space for developments of below 10, so we can't demand it. The exact mechanism by which it's maintained is for negotiation with the Section 106 agreement, which Mr. Baggett mentioned in his presentation. And as to the merits of that particular vehicle, I can't express an opinion really. That's not for me to assess.
Perhaps I could just come back on that point, as my understanding is that motion is specifically relates to the management of public open spaces and the adoption of public open spaces by parish councils and town councils and such like, not the management of small areas of open space around developments that are privately owned.
Technicality I'm not particularly happy with. Okay, thank you.
Well, I just think that's where we are with that particular issue. Councillor Passingham.
This is in effect a public road as well. Can we not put a condition on that it's built to adoptable standards?
There was considerable to and fro between me, County Highways and the agent to try and get everything shipshape. With the way the site's laid out and the constraints of the built-up area boundary, it's not really possible to make it an adoptable standard. And in all honesty, the only real issue that was preventing that, I'll be corrected if I'm wrong, but it was just some of the private land, as in parking spaces and so forth, could be overswept by a larger vehicle entering the site. So it's really a very minimal infringement of the County Highway standards. They still can't adopt it, but it has no real bearing on the safety of the residents.
Councillor Passing, it's probably worth also mentioning, as we heard just the other day, that the County Highways are not looking to adopt cul-de-sacs in future anyway. So bear that in mind. Thank you. You got a follow-up question?
I've got another point. Could we put in the conditions that well, I consider that a public open space. I mean, it is an open space that people can walk on, and I'm sure they will. Can it not be a condition that it's a public open space and it's offered to the parish council to be adopted?
You can obviously put a condition as you see fit, but you have to have planning grounds to do that, of course. And the planning assessment is directed by our SPD on open space. And L3 of that document specifies when we can require public open space, and it's only for major developments of 10 or more dwellings. Now this is of 6 dwellings, so it falls below that, so we can't insist on public open space. We have no policy grounds to do it, therefore the condition wouldn't meet the test because there's no planning ground to require it, beneficial though it may be.
That clear, Councillor Passing? Clear on that. Thank you. Any further questions? Yeah, Councillor Ballinger.
Can I just clarify, what is the maximum occupancy for the whole housing estate?
I mean, you've got 3 3-bed dwellings and 3 4-bed dwellings. Is your line of questioning heading towards parking provision?
It's regarding parking. It's also regarding the infrastructure. We heard that there's 2 spaces at the school, oversubscribed at the GP. So parking's obviously that part of that as well. Yeah.
The only response I can make there then is that the parking on site meets our the standards in Part O of our SPD, which is all we can require it to do. And with regard to infrastructure like school spaces and so forth, that's what the SIL payment will be for. That should be directed towards school place provision and GP practice provision and so forth. Obviously, there is inevitably a bit of a lag time with that, but that's what's supposed to happen with it.
Okay. Further questions? Okay, thanks so much for that. So we can move on to debate and discuss this application. Who would like to kick off? Please, Councillor Parry.
Thank you. I actually think this is a rather desirable development. There's plenty of space around the density, the proposed density of the 3 and 4 bedroom dwellings is particularly attractive, and by accounts with all the other housing nearby, it's particularly nice that whoever buys it, they've actually got some green space in front of them, and more than likely it looks quite a premier type of development, and I would have thought the homeowners would want to ensure that the private open space is certainly maintained to a good standard and would probably do a bit of mowing and what have you. So, and the actual dwelling side of things, are within the built-up area boundary. And of course, I wish to remind fellow committee members about the lack of the 5-year housing land supply. I actually wish we had more developments of this sort of layout space that comes forward. So I can't see any objections to this. It ticks a lot of boxes. We particularly want to be moving forward and getting houses built swiftly and quickly. So I'm happy to propose.
Oh, thank you very much, Councillor Parry. Then let's propose a recommendation to grant in accordance with the officer's recommendations. And could you just add that you're also happy with that to include the conditions that are listed in the report?
Absolutely. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Who else would like to speak on this item? Councillor Eden.
Thank you, Chair. Looking at the photos in Paul's presentation, I did look at them and think that's a bit of a shame. However, thanks. I do have to echo Councillor Parry. I think that it is the best of what could probably be done within the space. I think clearly there's been a lot of work done in the background to make it acceptable. I think that the part of the majority of the development is within the built-up area boundary, which already had it is still there. Let's try to do that. And to be honest, I can't build enough of an argument out of the harms identified to overcome the 5-year housing and land supply direction either. So with a slightly heavy heart, but in some respects not, because it does look like a well thought out and constructed development, I will second Councillor Parry's recommendation.
Thank you very much. Councillor Eden. That's Councillor Ballinger, please.
I kind of have the opposite view, unfortunately, in regards to the management company side of it. I have grave concerns that we are adding to this whole debacle around potential fees going in for a management company, extra fees on top of people purchasing the property to pay a yearly annual management fee. I'm still undecided where I'm going to be going, but I just wanted to add that.
Thank you for that. I have a view on that in response, in a way, as this is part of the debate. My own personal view, a lot of these developments come forward with small areas of private open space that need to be managed. Somebody's got to manage it. There's some costs associated with managing it. This isn't public open space, as you've heard from the case officers. So those that buy into this development will have to also buy into the responsibility for participating in the upkeep of that for their own benefit. It's their private benefit, not for public benefit. Councillor Adam.
Thank you. It's an interesting one. I think I'm going down the line of supporting Councillor Eden and Parry's position, but I think it's worth covering the situation we're in and the context of that. Excuse me, because I hear what the ward member is saying and the parish council through their representations as well, and I think those are salient points. The issue we have is the planning position does not apply enough weight to those to give us reason to go against. I suppose the process as it is, we've got the recommendation to grant. If we refuse tonight and it were appealed, we wouldn't be able to apply the conditions that we are seeking to here. I'd like to see that the Section 106, which is applied as part of this recommendation, do some heavy lifting to make sure that there is the right contribution to local amenity and infrastructure. I think that's the main concern I have, obviously for the district at large, but particularly for this area of the villages around Southam, is they are in need of improved amenity. The Section 106 needs to be able to do work on that, even though it's relatively small at 6 houses. I think we have to expect that, you know, that consider what benefits we can do in line with the sort of typical arrangement that we're seeing. But yeah, if we saw this at appeal, we wouldn't get any conditions to secure any of these things in the way that we want to. So although I hear the drawbacks and I am sensitive particularly to the landscape, I don't think we've got enough to go against it from a planning point of view in the balance. And so I feel that I couldn't, in good faith, go against the officer's recommendation, unfortunately.
Okay, thanks very much. You made a very interesting comment about Section 106 doing some heavy lifting, and I think probably members are thinking, well, if there need to be contributions to things locally, because local facilities are under pressure, then the Section 106 and the SIL payments might be something to do with that. I'm just going to ask Richard if he'd come in and just comment at this point for me. On page 16, there's some heads of terms for agreement, legal agreement already being proposed. Richard, can you just talk members through what the contents of that 106 agreement would be, please?
Yeah, certainly, Mr. Chairman. You see the bullet points on page 16 under planning obligations. They would cover the matters around off-site affordable housing contribution. The reason that it's an off-site contribution is because, again, the site is below 10. That doesn't let a developer off the hook entirely. They have to pay a proportion in terms of a financial contribution, so that it is pooled together with other collections and can provide affordable housing elsewhere. SUDS maintenance, again, that is obviously the balancing pond would need maintaining, so there would need to be an ongoing maintenance contribution for that is provided to whoever it is that adopts that SUDS feature. And in a similar vein, the third bullet point looks to provide ongoing management, maintenance and funding for the ongoing habitat monitoring and that private open space. In effect, what the planning system's doing is ensuring that there is some long-term maintenance of the site, but it can't go further by saying who shall do it or how they shall do it. As long as it's maintained, that's the purpose of the planning system. There's a couple of other points there under planning obligations which need to be sorted out through the 106 agreement. One is the adoption or non-adoption of the cul-de-sac, and the other is something that I don't think is going to be followed up, having further looked at it, and that's the commuted sum towards the enhancement of public transport. The County Council haven't requested that, so I don't think we could justify that. It would also probably be picked up by, or could be picked up by, the £84,000 SIL, the SIL charge that this would levy. So yes, that's what I.
Right, thank you for that, Richard. I mean, hopefully members will see that the 106 is making or setting out the obligations on the developer for some of these contributions along with the SIL. So hopefully you can be reassured about that. Councillor Adam, thank you for raising that point. Would anybody else like to join the debate? Any further comments? In which case, I think I have a proposal from Councillor Parry, which is to follow the officer's recommendation to grant, subject to the conditions in the report. Councillor Parry, would that be right? Yeah, and that was seconded, I think, by Councillor Eden. The same terms and conditions of the report. In which case, on the basis of that proposal, can I have a show of hands, please, in support? Oh, okay. Thank you very much. In which case, Council resolves to grant 2500787 FUL, that's Ladbroke Road, Bishop Sitchington, in accordance with the officer's recommendations report and the conditions outlined therein, of which there are quite a few. So thank you all for that. Okay. Okay, we'll carry on without any further break. And we're going to consider the item 5 on the agenda, which is an application 2501202 Vary, Bright Hill Holding, Oxhill Bridle Road, Pillerton, Hersey. Variation of a number of conditions. Officer's report is in front of you, and again, it's Paul to present on this application. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so attentive members of the committee may recall this one from, where are we now, a couple of years ago. It was a replacement dwelling based on a fallback position established by a barn conversion under Class Q, Schedule 3, Part 2, Schedule 2, Part 3, sorry, Class Q of the General Permitted Development Order. That established the principle of residential development on the site, accompanied by substantial planning gains in terms of sustainability, climate change mitigation, planting and so forth. Permission was granted for a larger dwelling than the conversion would have allowed. What we are doing tonight is varying a couple of the conditions on that permission so that the applicant can carry out the work in stages. Also to submit some details required by other conditions, all of which set out in the report. So just by way of context, this is, on the left is the footprint of the barn as it stands, and on the right is what was granted permission in 2024. This is the phasing plan, which I meant to rotate and didn't. So if you're confused, then I apologise. I certainly am. The green at the bottom is phase 1. The yellow is phase 2. The orange is phase 3, and the blue is phase 4. The idea behind this application and the condition that I've set out in full in the report, and unlike the summaries you usually get, is to ensure that at the beginning of each phase we know what the development is going to look like at the end of that phase. So we'll have a schedule of the materials, we'll have a schedule of the finish, so that it can't, essentially so that it can't sit there looking unfinished for an extended period of time. We'll also get details of the sustainable drainage measures and other drainage scheme elements that will be carried out during that phase, and the climate change mitigation measures, solar panels and all that sort of thing, that will be carried out as part of that phase, again to make sure that we get the appropriate infrastructure and planning gain at the appropriate time in the development. There are also some tweaks to the approved plans. They're pretty inconsequential overall. With the magic of technology, I shall overlay the previously approved plans, which you see before you, with the proposal here. I shall flick back and forth a couple of times just to... So all the same, just some windows and doors in different places. Here are the other elevations. See the skylights migrating gracefully across the roof. And again, for reference, here are the photographs. As you can see, the existing building is not blessed with architectural merit, let's say. It's a sort of hodgepodge of materials from various times. There's a telegraph pole there, I think, and some corrugated sheeting. That's the view out across the field. So the purpose of this determination, or the scope of this determination, I should say, is to assess any harms or additional benefits that amending the conditions and or discharging the conditions might merit. Compare those to the original planning permission as granted, and to come to a decision based on that. We're not reassessing the principle of the development. That's already established and irrevocable, essentially. So on that basis, Chair, I've found that subject to suitably worded conditions, there's no additional harm, and that permission should therefore be granted.
Thank you very much, Paul. Okay, we have a couple of speakers on this item. We have Councillor Thomas from Pillerton Hersey Parish Council. Councillor Thomas, good evening and welcome. Thank you very much. So, when you're settled, do you have any photographs or anything like that?
No, I have no photographs.
No. Okay, super. So, if you... Oh, you're on. Okay, no problem. You have 3 minutes. So, I'll give you a shout out about 30 seconds before the time's up. Okay.
Right,
When you're
I
ready.
am Glanford Thomas. I am a councillor for the parish of Pillerton Hersey, and I represent the council at this meeting. The proposed development is within the parish of Pillerton Hersey. There is only one variation in the conditions to which we have an objection. Our objection to the proposal relates to the request for a phased development, allowing the applicant to construct part of the project, then live in that part whilst building the remainder of the project. This is apparently being requested by the applicant as he does not have funding for the whole project. See page 29, where this is actually alluded to as his motivation for the variation. Of course, the first reason we have for objection is that the personal finances of the applicant must not be considered in planning decisions. Hence, as there is no other justification given for introducing a phased development, it should not be approved. Notwithstanding the above, the granting of a phased development has consequences for the local residents. The development is up a narrow lane with no passing places, no footpath, and many places no grass verges with hedgerows up to the edge of the road. The road is also a dead end, and so access is only from the junction with Kyneton Road in Pillerton Hersey. There are no places for a lorry to turn around, and so we'll need to reverse down the length of the road from the site. The site is 650 metres from Kyneton Road, and there are 17 houses along this stretch. The road is used by walkers and horse riders. The road is not called Oxford Bridle Way for nothing. It continues, although the road is a dead end, the bridle way continues to Oxhill. The construction of the property is going to cause considerable disturbance to the local population. This has already been reported by local residents in comments on the original proposal. We agree that the proposal has been accepted, but I think it is right that we make you aware of the situation and the concerns of the local residents. Allowing a phased bill will stretch the length of time for construction by months or even years, as there are 4 phases. And also, there will be no incentive for the applicant to complete the project. In addition, condition 3 of the phase development states that before development commences on any given phase, approval from planning department will be required. Also, can I point out, as well as the considerably increased of time for disturbance and inconvenience to the neighbourhood, the site will remain unsightly for longer. To conclude, local residents will suffer considerable disturbance by this construction. Granting a phased construction will increase the disturbance by months or even years. And the only benefit will be to the applicant, as it will help him with the financing of his project. Hence, Pillerton Hersey Parish Council objects to allowing phased construction.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Okay, members, do we have any questions for Councillor Thomas, please? I'm looking around, don't think there are any. I have a quick question for you, Councillor Thomas. If this was an ordinary full application and the application had been implemented, the permission had been implemented, had it been granted, do you know how long an applicant or a developer would be able to take in order to complete a building?
No.
Okay, so it's sort of slightly rhetorical. We'll ask that question.
Maybe Mr. Thomas can answer
when we get to that point, I think I'll ask the case officers that question, because I think it might be relevant. So, any further questions? No? Thank you very much indeed for your representations. Okay, the second speaker on this item is Councillor Littlewood. Good evening, Councillor Littlewood. Welcome.
Good evening, Chair. Good evening, Committee.
Okay, Councillor Littlewood, do you have anything to show, or are you just speaking? You've got 5 minutes. Shall I give you a Heads up.
I don't think I'll need that long.
Okay. Okay. Thanks a lot. Whenever you're ready to start.
Okay, thank you. The previous speaker has really read my script and I think has clearly described what the concerns of the parish council and the residents are. This isn't about granting permission, it's already been done, but those original conditions were set to minimise nuisance and protect the village as such, because the lane and the Ox Hill Bridle Road runs down to the centre of the village to the Kyneton Road at the point where the stream or the river that runs into the River Dean goes under the river, and that is a Zone 3 flood area. So the actual site isn't, it's Zone 1, clearly, but I know from personal experience that it regularly floods substantially there. So there is a concern that, bearing in mind the reason for the phasing of the work has been set out and conditions have been changed and modified to cover much of the worry. The conditions to handle the site so it mitigates surface water runoff, which can't completely be done until gutters and downpipes are in place. This needs to be done right at the beginning as far as possible. I'm asking for that condition, the committee look at that condition in some detail. The nuisance value is also been mentioned by the previous by councillor, and he very well illustrates the narrowness of the road, which is evident from the pictures provided by the officer. Having a phased build really is a worry in the sense that a protraction because of the phasing would cause nuisance and detriment to residents and users. It is, after all, a bridle road, and walkers use it quite largely for dog walking, etc., etc. So, concern over the phasing, I think, has been addressed by the recommendations of the officer. But I ask the committee to assure themselves that these conditions are strong enough and enforceable to the protection of the community as a whole. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much, Councillor Littlewood. Do we have any questions for Councillor Littlewood, please? Okay, thank you, Councillor Littlewood, for your representations. Okay, members, now's the opportunity to ask questions of the case officers. So has anybody got any questions? Councillor Parry, please. Thanks, Sue.
Thank you. My query relates to the passive house element of the original planning. If I am right, because I've had a similar case in my ward, passive house certification isn't granted until the completion of the dwelling. Is that correct? Because normally occupation of a dwelling, of a passive house dwelling, is often linked to when the person can, if this original house, the permission hinged on its passive house condition, then the passive house certification couldn't happen and couldn't be granted until the whole dwelling was completed. There have been some instances that a person can't move into a dwelling until the passive house certification has been granted. I just wonder whether the officers can give some clarification over that.
I don't know about clarification, Councillor. I think I'll have to defer to your superior knowledge on that one. What I would say, however, is that for my part, my assessment there would be it wouldn't be determinative in this case. if the final result is to Passive House standard, really whether they certify it is a moot point. I think it would still deliver the sustainability gain, the public benefit, if you will, that we've assessed for the application. So the certification or otherwise wouldn't change that. So that's interesting. That's news to me, but it wouldn't affect my assessment.
I think the point you're raising is that the passive house testing is a pressure test, isn't it? So you have to wait till the building's finished in order to pressure test it to make sure it's airtight, and it's that leakage of air that determines whether or not it meets the passive house requirements. So I think what you're suggesting is you can't insist upon a passive house requirement if you're building it in phases and occupying phases, because it wouldn't be completed. I think that's probably the point that's being raised.
If I could just clarify there, it would be possible for each phase to be airtight of its own. Yeah, and that would be controlled through the condition we're recommending. Through, which one was it? The complicated condition. So that each phase, yeah, we would get, as an authority, the opportunity to review how that phase is implemented. And that would include I mean, it would have to be airtight in terms of building regs. Beyond that, it's hard to say whether it would be airtight enough to be passive house, but the individual could occupy it. So the occupation's not an issue, i.e. if it's occupied as a small house and let's say the rest of it's never done, then they could seek passive house for that because they're occupying it.
That's extremely helpful. Thank you. And I just
I'm
would like...
more confused now than I was a minute ago.
No, I find that really helpful because I have an interesting case in my ward where, but I won't go there.
Okay.
The interesting thing also, there have been comments about finance and building the house in phases. What I have been led to believe, you can see I've done a little bit of research into passive house, is that property people buy a self-build or even a developer building a passive house, normally the increase in costs to gain a passive house standard can be as much as 40% more. So I can understand why the property owner is building this passive house in stages because of financial reasons.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Scorer, please.
Thank you, Chair. Could I have a look at one of the photographs again from the road, just to see if I'm just looking at, obviously the parish council mentioned that I know the road and it is quite a narrow road, but just looking at delivery vehicles going down there, obviously he mentioned about reversing all the way up, but it's quite a big curtilage, so within time, I'm just wanted to make sure, double check, it's a double gate, so any delivery vehicle could come in, do a 3-point turn, that was all.
Agreed. That was it would have been open to us on the original permission to impose a condition requiring a construction management plan, but as you've just outlined, that's why we didn't think it was necessary ultimately.
Okay, can I ask a question of you, Paul? You know, the residents, Councillor Littlewood and Councillor Thomas, have raised questions about the length of time which disturbance might be a problem for residents, given that phasing would mean that this development could take some considerable time to build out. Could you just clarify for us a couple of things? First of all, you know, conditions on ordinary applications in respect of implementation and completion, that's the first thing, and how that might relate to something like a phased development like this, and whether or not it would be reasonable to try and place a condition on the time within which the development should be completed, or not, as the case may be.
Yeah, well, the very brief answer is that there is no hard time limit on completing a development. So, in effect, to sort of follow the rhetorical question, to its logical conclusion, this, in many ways, gives us, the condition 3 in particular, gives us more control over the progression of the development rather than less. It means that at the very least we know that once the applicant starts a phase of the development, we know what it's going to look like at the end of it, and we know that that's going to be to a decent standard, so that even if it never proceeds further than that, it's a decent standard that delivers the gains that it can. Yeah, the point about disturbance and the property looking unsightly for longer that Councillor Thomas made during his presentation, it's an understandable concern, but I would say again that's not something that would be any different to a normal planning application. The fact that this is phased doesn't mean that development will be continuous throughout a longer period. It means that it will be potentially compressed, if anything, into smaller phases so that disruption wouldn't be sort of aggregated across a longer time. It would be discrete chunks whilst each phase gets developed, and then there's a cessation, so there'll be no further disturbance during that period, and then the next phase starts up. So it would just be a different pattern rather than an elongated period, I would say.
And a follow-up to that, if I may, Paul, page 28, penultimate paragraph. Councillor Littlewood raised some concerns about the prospect of flood risk and such like being a potential issue if the site was built out in phases. Can you just clarify what's intended in respect of the overall provision of improvements in that respect on the site in advance of the building out of the phases, so that we can just be clear that this isn't an issue that we understand how your recommendations actually addressing those sorts of issues that Councillor Littlewood has raised.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, with one of the several public benefits that the original permission delivered and was predicated on delivering is that the surface water runoff from the site. I know from personal experience that Oxhill Bridle Road has some pretty bad flooding issues. The surface water runoff from the surface and groundwater runoff from the site will actually be reduced by the development, not increased. So it's obviously very important to deliver that, that the measures that will deliver that are delivered at the start, and that is the expectation. That's the only phasing that we would approve under condition 3 that I propose here. To clarify, the expectation is that all of the measures that will reduce surface and groundwater runoff from the site will be implemented with phase 1 and must be in place before it's brought into use. So all of the material planning gain that we're looking at receiving from this development will be received regardless of how far it goes. And again, that's, if anything, an advantage over another development where that might there might be more sort of elasticity in when that's delivered.
Okay, I think Councillor Ballinger had a question.
Just on page 30 regarding the conditions and the time limit, can you tell me what the time limit would be, please?
Sorry, is the implementation time limit?
Yeah.
Yeah. So implementation, of course, we mean when development has to start. So because the original permission was granted subject to the standard time limit condition of 3 years from the date of the permission, that goes to 17th September 2027. You can't use a Section 73 application like this to extend the time limit for implementation, and so the condition here will be worded such that work must start by 17th of September 2027 rather than within 3 years as it would normally be.
Right, okay, thank you for that, Paul. Any further questions? In which case, members, I think we can move on to debate this item, discuss it. Anybody like to kick off with their thoughts on this application? Councillor Adam.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I can understand again where the where parish council and the ward member are coming from with this. And I do remember the application when it came through committee before. And I think we could spend a long time talking about the merits or otherwise of class Qs and the legacy that they're having, but we're not here to determine that. We're here to look at these. It seems that the phasing is that's been proposed as sort of having ripples throughout the conditions, and I think that's how we're getting these individual ones coming out. Again, the reasoning behind that phasing is not material, that's established and put to bed in the report. So I'd say actually the point that Paul made in terms of control starts to be the relevant argument that I think needs to kind of be taken forward here. Because in planning applications, notwithstanding a couple of exceptions, are there in perpetuity, effectively. So once you've got it, that's what you know you're going to get. I think we've got the opportunity to control the development as much as possible to make sure that what will be delivered does have as minimal impact as possible. It's understandable that might leave a bad taste in the mouth of the parish who obviously weren't happy about this. I accept that, but it still puts us in as much control as we can expect to, and in that we try and improve the situation, particularly the surface water runoff, and the rest is unfortunately outside of our control, as it always is. So essentially I hear where the local representatives are coming from, but I think this is kind of the best situation we can hope for within the scope of what's happening here with a phasing approach. So, I mean, on that basis, I'm happy to support the officer's recommendation.
Thank you very much, Councillor Adam. We'll take that as a proposal from you then to accept the recommendation of the officers to grant in accordance with the conditions set out in the officer's report. Who else would like to come in? Councillor Eden.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Adams said most of what I was going to say and a bit more. The key element here is that there's actually more control based on this, and the benefits are potentially received sooner than later. So rather than prattling on, I'm happy to second.
Okay, Councillor Eden, I'll accept that as a second. Who else would like to speak on this issue? Councillor Padgham.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I do understand where the Parish Council raising the concern about the extended construction period. However, I do feel that that was addressed in a satisfactory way by the officers, sort of through the questions of clarification, and the fact that it would be sort of chunks of development with gaps in between rather than one long sort of drawn out phase of development. I think I'm happy with that. So I'd be happy to support what Councillor Adam and Councillor Eden have said when we move to the next part. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Badgham. Does anybody else want to come in on this? Anybody got an alternative view? In which case, I think if no one else wants to speak, I think I'll take that forward then. So we have a proposal from Councillor Adam to accept the officer's recommendation to grant in accordance with the conditions set out in the report, seconded by Councillor Eden. Could I have a show of cards in favour of that proposal, please?
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much, Olivia. In which case I can say that Council resolved to grant application 2501-202/vary in accordance with the recommendation of the officer's report and the conditions set out therein. Thank you very much, members. Thank you for presenting as well to help us understand that those issues. Thank you all. I'm going to take a short break now for 5 minutes, natural break, and then we'll come back on to the next item. Yeah, okay, excellent. Thank you very much, everybody. Okay, so we can move on now to agenda item 6. This is application 2502520. It's FUL, and it's Glendale Camp Lane, Warmington. So Paul's presenting and taking us through this application. Paul, when you're ready. Thank you.
Thank you once again, Chair. Before I begin, I have a couple of updates from the update sheet, namely Ratley Parish Council withdrew its objection on the 20th of March this year, and on the 19th of March, the climate change checklist, or the matrix of climate change measures, was submitted, which does not affect the content of the report, and the condition 15 that's recommended in the report will secure the implementation of and compliance with those measures. Moving on to the development itself, this is on Camp Lane in Warmington in the Cotswolds, on the edge of Edge Hill, or a slope of Edge Hill, I suppose. It crosses or sits athwart the boundary between two parishes, Ratley and Warmington, with supernumerary elements. So both parishes have been consulted. It is exactly the same, with one exception that I'll come to presently, as a scheme that for which we granted permission in 2020 for a replacement dwelling. Replaces the existing bungalow on the site, or dormer bungalow, with a replacement dwelling. These aren't great quality, but we will have some zoomed in elevations presently. So the floor plans are all the same, no changes there. The elevations are almost all the same, except, and I'll skip ahead, there is now a bat cavity for a very small Batman in the gable end. There, that's, if anything, a betterment over the original permission, but in every other respect, the development is the same, the site is the same, and the policy context is the same. Again, one small exception there is the wording regarding how we're to approach the aims and purposes of the area of outstanding natural beauty. That was changed slightly with the in 2023, so that whereas before we had to have regard to the purposes of the including land in the AONB, we now have to further those purposes. The case officer here does not consider that change to be material to the determination. So, as I say, development's the same, the site is the same, the policy context is the same, and therefore the recommendation, Chair, is the same. That's to grant planning permission for this replacement dwelling.
Okay, thanks very much, Paul. Okay, we've got two speakers on this. First of all, we've got Councillor Stevens Hoare, who's from Warmington and Alscott Parish Council. Good evening, Councillor. Good evening. Thank you for coming along. And you've obviously got concerns about this because you're objecting to it. So if you'd like, have you got any photographs you want to show or anything like that? No? Okay. So you can take us through your concerns, and I have you down for 3 minutes. It's the right-hand one. A little light should come on.
Okay. Thank you. Yes, I'm Susie Stevens-Hoare, Chairman of Warmington Alscott Parish Council. Firstly say that we are not against development. We're very much for development. It's been very interesting listening to tonight. However, there are many reasons why we believe this application should be refused. And due to time constraints...
Councillor, sorry. Could you, because this is recorded, and we do get, believe it or not, quite a few views, which is a bit sad, isn't it? I know, but we do. Could you just move the microphone across to yourself so that we get a clearer... That's it, super.
Okay, right. So shall I start again, or shall I... Right. Warmington and Alscott Parish Council are not against development. However, there are many reasons why we believe this application should be refused. due to time constraints, I will focus on two major issues, those of enlargement and secondly, consistency of application of policy. The Stratford District Council core strategy states under policy CS20, where the existing dwelling is not considered suitable for retention, the replacement dwelling will be well sited in relation to the existing site and buildings, not visually intrusive and not significantly larger than the dwelling it replaces. This application does not meet this point. It is 5 times larger than the current dwelling. The core strategy goes on to state in section 5.6.3 that the council must ensure it strikes an appropriate balance by protecting the amenity of neighbouring residents. This application does not do this. It looks upon the property below it, Knoll House. The core strategy also states on page 194, for proposals relating to sites in the Greenbelt or Cotswolds area of outstanding natural beauty, the specific provisions of policy CS10 and CS11 respectively will be taken fully into account. This application is in the AONB and I do not believe it takes these conditions into account. We are concerned that the core strategy is not being applied in a consistent manner. There are 2 applications in the very close proximity to this application. One has been refused on the basis of enlargement only. It is not as big. It is in a very private site, a much bigger site, and there have been no objections to it. The second is 2 doors away, Battle Lodge, which the chairman probably will have seen if he's driven past, which was given permission. And in the delegated report, first paragraph talks about a small scale property in keeping with the enlargement condition of core strategy. Goes on to talk about residential amenity being important as well. 2 points that this application does not meet. So why is this application being proposed for approval when it contradicts 2 other applications in terms of following the strategy? My last point is when we were asked to withdraw our objection to this application, the main reason given was it was approved in 2020. 2020 is 6 years ago. This application has lapsed. The current application should be considered as a new application, and it is our belief just because it was approved last time doesn't mean it should automatically approve this time. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Right, so there's an opportunity for members to ask any questions of you or points of clarification. Members, who would like to ask a question? Councillor Hencher-Seraphin.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening.
Okay.
So the application in 2020
Yes.
wasn't for such a large building, was
No,
it?
it was for such a large building, but it was based... So there was an application in 2017 that, for an extension, and then that application was approved, and it was still live when then they applied to make it an even bigger building. So it was the same size, yes. But our concern is that that application, you know, again, it was inconsistent with the policy, and so why should it? I'm not. Perhaps it should not have been approved last time. Just because it was approved last time, why should it be approved this time?
Okay, understand. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Any further questions? No? Well, Councillor, thanks very much for that. And I think we got the message about your concerns about the application of policy, the size of the building, and also the AONB. And we can also ask questions of the case officers when we get to that point. Thank you. So our next speaker is Duncan Chadwick, who's the agent. Good evening, Mr. Chadwick. Thank you for your patience and thank you for coming along. So the right-hand side, yeah, and likewise, I think you've got 3 minutes as well. Will you need all of that? Because you need a reminder when you get towards the end.
You could do that if I get that far.
I'll do that. Okay, so if you could get the microphone in front of you so we can pick you up whenever you're ready. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair, and members of the committee, and for allowing me to speak. As Mr Thompson said, this is an identical application to one that members approved in November 2020, in the middle of the pandemic. Just as my client was trying to discharge pre-commencement conditions on the permission to start to build, the permission ran out of time and lapsed in 2024. Basically, this seeks to renew the permission and address some of the conditions on that previous consent, dealing with landscaping, construction environmental management plan, archaeological evaluation, updated bat surveys and ecological documents. That's all been done and all supports the application. It's still for a replacement dwelling, which is also proposed as a self-build dwelling. My client intends to develop it and live in it. The scale and design of the proposed dwelling is exactly the same as previously approved. Now, there's been no material change in planning circumstances or in policies, and being the same proposal as approved before, we and your officers believe that it should be afforded significant weight in the consideration and determination of this application. Whilst the proposal would not add numerically to housing supply in the district, it would bring a dwelling back into use and result in a more satisfactory dwelling than the existing bungalow, which is not considered suitable for retention in line with policies AS10 and CS20 of the core strategy. This is due to its substandard roof, poor insulation and thermal performance, and there's an opportunity here to build a replacement self-build dwelling using sustainable construction techniques. Now, looking at the main considerations, previously, the design was held to be acceptable, the materials were held to be acceptable. It was held to not adversely affect the amenity of neighbouring properties, but also provide a sufficient level of amenity for future occupants in line with policies AS10 and CS9 of the core strategy. Members also previously were satisfied that the development would conserve the special landscape character of the Cotswold National Landscape and the street scene. A landscape condition was imposed and that was been discharged by the council, but is also proposed again. Members were also satisfied that the development would provide satisfactory access and parking in accordance with your policies, and this has been supported by the County Highway Authority in raising no objection to the scheme.
Coming to 30 seconds to go.
Members are also satisfied that the development would not impact upon protected species and updated surveys have been carried out. So in summary, your officers are satisfied that the proposal is acceptable once again, and there are no objections from Highways, Environmental Health, Ecology and the Cotswold Management Board. We therefore would request that the members follow the previous recommendation, previous decision and officers' advice and grant consent for this development. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much, Mr Chadwick. Members, do we have any questions in respect to Mr Chadwick's representations? Doesn't look like it. Thank you very much indeed for coming along. Okay, members, this is the opportunity to ask questions to the case officer now. So who has any questions? Yes, I've got Councillor Ballinger first.
I heard from Councillor Stephen Howard the actual size of the dwelling has increased from the current footprint. Can you just describe the amount of increase?
Well, I think the salient point is that the councillor is that the increase is exactly the same as we've already granted permission for. So it would be inconsistent for us, given the policy context, to make a different assessment this time. In terms of numbers, forgive me for flicking through the report. This is not my application. I would have to go back to the previous report to give you numbers. If you bear with me, I can do that.
I think we could do that. Councillor Stevens-Hoare commented specifically about concerns in respect of inconsistent application of policy and this enlargement. So I think a bit of clarification on that is important, notwithstanding the fact that previously this had been consented. Because some other examples were brought forward, not that we've seen the detail, but some other examples appear to have been brought forward.
Yeah, Mr. Thompson's going to look for the details in answer to the first question. In answer to your question about the parish's concerns about consistency of decision making, obviously consistency is very important, but no two sites are the same. I don't know the details of the sites that were mentioned, and they don't appear in the parish's comments, so I'm unable to say what the circumstances were in those cases. But in any event, every time an inspector is invited to look at other sites, they conclude that each site should be judged on its own merits. So I'm comfortable with the consistency of decision making on this one, and that would actually be inconsistent to make a different decision from the one 6 years ago.
Thank you very much, Richard. Councillor Hencher, Seraphin, you had a question. You indicated you had a question.
No, the question is, can the case officer move closer to his mic because I can't hear him properly?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
Paul, that's you, I think.
I'm not often accused of being shy and retiring, so sorry about that. I have an answer for you, Councillor Ballinger. The original report says, when considering the built form of the existing lawful dwelling on the site, the replacement dwelling would have twice as large a footprint. Furthermore, the replacement dwelling would have a floor area over 4 times the floor area associated with the existing dwelling on the site. The replacement dwelling would have a higher ridge height than the existing dwelling by approximately 0.5 metre. And the replacement dwelling would also have an increased bulk and mass over and above the existing dwelling. I think it's also fair to say that the case officer goes on to put that in the context of the 2017 permission that had already been granted at that stage, so it's a sort of chain of permissions, maybe.
That 2017 permission granted was for extensions to the building, is that right, Paul?
Correct, Chair, yes.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Parry.
Yes, and I just wondered that I'd get the officer to confirm this, because obviously back in 2020, this is a self-build, isn't it, for a replacement dwelling? And would I be right in thinking back in 2020, we had a shortfall in the number of self-build dwellings, which would have added weight to the decision-making to grant the replacement dwelling in 2020. Appreciate we don't have a shortfall on self-build now, but that would also have counted, am I right in thinking, towards the granting permission in the 2020 because of the self-build shortfall?
Exactly right, yes, Councillor.
I mean, I'm going to comment on that particular question, I think, because we've got to consider the application in front of us now. Although, yeah, I do understand where you're coming from in respect of the decision that was made in 2020, but I'm not sure how relevant that is right this minute. Who else has got a question? Any further questions? I do want to clarify with the officers the second point. Sorry, you looking for something?
Sorry.
It's okay. I'll just leave. Are you looking for something specifically?
No.
Go ahead, please.
I will. It's really the second point that was raised by Councillor Stevens-Hoare in respect of the impact on the AONB. Can you just help members understand that assessment? Because what we've heard in respect of the objections is that the parish council believe that there clearly is some impact and harm, but I mean, I guess you've assessed the harm, but I'll let you answer that. It's a question of the extent of it.
The current report essentially reiterates the point that I will reiterate here, which is that the impact on the national landscape, the AONB, by any other name, is the same as the scheme previously granted permission. Again, with the point about consistency. In the original report, it was assessed that it would generally be of a piece with the dwellings surrounding it. It wouldn't appear out of place amongst them in terms of, and thereby have an impact through its incongruity. Yes, in short, the case officer felt that that the impact was on the AONB was acceptable in its context. I think it's fair to say as well that it remains a single-storey dwelling from the street scene. The ground falls away at the rear, and that gives the extra floor space. I do have.
Could you also comment, Paul? If I'm sorry to interrupt you, could you also comment on the consultation response from Cotswold National Landscape and whether or not our own landscape officer had been invited to comment?
Our landscape officer, has since departed, and there isn't a procedure in place to consult them on minor applications as it stands. I confess I have not seen the consultation response from...
The report just says standard advice, 11th of November 2025. I appreciate you're presenting this, but it's not your report, Paul.
So from my experience of similar responses from the CNLB, it's usually on the lines of, we're not making any comments because it's too small scale a scheme, but here's our policy on dwellings in the national landscape, etc., etc. Yes, just on the previous point about impact, I think this is an illustrative. Never mind. You can see what you're looking at. This is the view from Arlescote Road at the bottom of the hill, looking up towards the site. What you can see there is the neighbouring dwelling. So the application site is about where my pointer is. So this just illustrates that it's not hugely visible from the road. And if we go that way a bit, it's quickly screened by the tree belt, and the same is true in the opposite direction. I think it just illustrates the point.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. I just wanted to make sure that members had the opportunity to consider the objections from the parish council on those particular issues. Councillor Passingham next, and then I'm coming to Councillor Ballinger.
Yeah, I just wondered, in terms of sustainability, it's considered better to not knock down old buildings, but to renovate them and extend them. And I just wonder if there's any weight given to, in terms of the sustainability requirement, to the fact that a building is being knocked down that could have been extended and it's in a national landscape area.
Yes, Councillor, that assessment is more or less implicit in CS20B for replacement dwellings, or is it C? Anyway, it basically says where it's not suitable for retention, so you have to first establish is it suitable for retention. The agent covered this in his presentation. The current dwelling really isn't suitable. The roof is to use a technical term, knackered. There are other issues, all of which amount to a dwelling that can be replaced, and the replacement, even accounting for the demolition, the loss of the embedded carbon in those materials, the replacement dwelling is so much more energy efficient and better constructed and not knackered that it's a net gain fundamentally.
I'll satisfy you, Councillor Passingham. Thank you. Councillor Ballinger, please.
Can I just confirm, just for completeness, regarding the obviously the 5-year housing land supply, because there's a, is it because there's a dwelling there already knocked down and it's being built again, it's not going to be counted? Just for if anybody's watching in, just to just to note that.
Correct, it's a wash. We lose one, we gain one.
Any further questions? No, I think. Oh, Councillor Adam.
Only, could I see the site photos again, please? Just a quick run through, and maybe the plans as well.
Yeah, sorry, Councillor, I did rather skip over these in the presentation. So this is the front elevation of the existing dwelling, as I understand it. That's viewed down the left-hand side through hell of a view. That's to the rear, I believe, looking sort of diagonally across the rear garden. That's towards the neighbour on the right as you face it from the road. To the left, to the right. Oh, and this is the, also of relevance, the construction management plan, which just covers where everything's going to be deposited during construction to make sure there's no disruption to the highway. Do you want to see anything else, Councillor?
Just the plans for the proposal. Sorry.
So these are the elevations. The quality isn't great, but if we go, we can see these elevations.
I'm right in understanding that there's a degree of sort of excavation into the ground to introduce more of the space. So although the actual volume is increased, some of that's essentially in the ground.
That's it. Yeah, it's cut into the slope, Councillor, exactly.
Okay, Councillor Adam, I'm happy with that. Further questions? In which case we can move on to discuss and debate. Who would like to start with their views on this application for the replacement of Glendale? Councillor Eden.
Thank you, Chair. In the interest of consistency, I'd like to propose that we go with officers' recommendations and grant this again.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Eden. And that would be also in accordance with the conditions set out in the officer's report, yeah?
Of course.
Thank you. Okay. Would anybody else like to speak on this? I've got a couple. I'll go to Councillor Parry, I think, next.
Thank you, Chair. In view of, as I say, keeping matters consistent, I see no material planning reasons to refuse this application because the precedent has already been set for the size, volume of this replacement dwelling. So very pleased to second Councillor Eden's proposal, including the conditions set out in the officer's
Thank you,
report.
Councillor Parry. I think I had Councillor Ballinger next. No? Shaking head. Councillor Adam?
Yeah, thank you. I am in support of the application. It was just a note that I think it's right that we have it in front of us tonight, because I know that it is, as alluded to, almost identical, but rightfully so, the parish council is representing their residents in bringing it to us. They did before, they did now, so I'm just glad from that consistency point of view that we are considering it as a committee and considering it under that context, the context of policy as it is now, from a democratic point of view more than anything.
Yeah, I think I'd add to that. Thank you for saying that, Councillor Adam. Of course, since this meeting is recorded, we did have the responses from the case officer and the planning manager on these policy issues. So the parish council have got that to refer back to if they should they wish to do so. Would anybody else like to comment? Councillor Henshaw-Seraphin.
Yeah, I'm always concerned with the scale of what's been proposed now from what was. And also, Parish Councillor also remarked on inconsistencies, and I've had this in the past with other planning applications, and I think it needs to be more consistent, whichever planning application.
Yeah, thanks for that. Further comments? Looks like I can say that we have a proposal from Councillor Eden to accept the officer's recommendation subject to conditions set out in the report, which is seconded by Councillor Parry. So on that basis, I'd like to take that to a vote, please. So all those in favour of that proposal, please show the cards. So, okay, 10. Are there some against? Abstentions? One abstention, okay. Thank you very much. So on that basis, I can say that the council have resolved to grant application 2502520 FUL, that's Glendale, Camp Lane, Warmington, on the basis of the officer's report recommendation and the conditions set out in that report. So thank you all for that. So, and thank you also to those members from the Parish Council and the public coming along tonight to present on that and to explain your views. Thank you for that. It's very valuable. So I'd like to go back to the agenda and item, it must be item 8. I can't see it on here. I think I've lost it. Oh, 7. Oh, I beg your pardon. And in fact, at the very beginning of this meeting, I should have made it very clear that the item 7, which is application 2503021 FUL, that's Hall Lane, Harbury, full application for 2 dwellings, that the Harbury Parish Council withdrew its objections, so the application has been delegated to officers. We shall not be hearing that this evening. So that must mean that the next item on the agenda is item 8.
No urgent business, Chair.
Thank you. On that basis, I think then we can close the meeting. Thank you all very much for attending. Richard just wanted to say something before he left. Well, now the meeting is